We got a ton of new Far Cry 6 details. It seems like the game has more tools and things to use than we got footage of so far. And there is this interesting notoriety system that I did not know about before. So really a ton to go over, a lot of new info in this video. A like would of course really help me out. And let's go. As you might know, I'm doing an Ultimate Edition giveaway for Far Cry 6, which you can enter via the link in the pinned comment. And be sure you are a subscriber of the channel as well before you participate, and I'll reach out and announce the winner before launch. A lot of new info is coming from some new interviews, but also a developer Q&A on Reddit. A few days before this Q&A, I already reported that there would be no Far Cry Arcade in Far Cry 6, and now Alex, the game director, also responded to a question about this on Reddit. He noted that removing this mode from our plan was a difficult decision, but allowed us to focus our efforts on the main campaign. And I said it in my previous video as well, talking about the missing mode, that especially for the post-launch, it will be good to have one focus, because splitting content drops between Far Cry 5's open world and the arcade mode just did not work out. But yeah, of course, it sucks if you mostly played Far Cry for the arcade. Another thing, or actually person, who won't be returning is Herc, a character we saw in Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, in Far Cry 5 he became a gun for hire. He played a huge part in the Lost on Mars DLC, and of course was also in Far Cry New Dawn, but the game director now notes that they want to mainly spotlight characters from the region, Yara, so Herc will be on other adventures during the time of Far Cry 6. Maybe another DLC, why not? We of course know that Far Cry 6 will have 3 expansions, so maybe Herc will be part of one of those. And speaking of guns for hire, they won't be in Far Cry 6, only the Thanks for Hire, which are now called Amigos. We of course already saw Chorizo, Guapo, the crocodile, and in the 5 pack of the Ultimate Edition we see a big cat who we can likely have by our side as well. And we now learned that it will be a bigger roster of Thanks for Hire than previous Far Cry games, but that just means that it's more than 3, because we had 3 in Far Cry 5 and 2 in New Dawn. So if they have 4 in total, that would already be more, but I hope there's like 5 at least, and I'm sure they will reveal more later. Good to note, by the way, is that even though there are no guns for hire, we will still be fighting alongside some characters that are likely part of some main or side missions. We just cannot summon them like in the previous games. And I really like how they talk about the open world structure, which seems quite similar to previous Far Cry titles. It's really that you can tackle things in any order, and it seems like there are more side missions this time around, or just people you can help in general. And sure, we had that in Far Cry 5 and New Dawn, for example, as well, but these missions were mostly linked to guns for hire. So in Far Cry 6, I think we will talk to a lot of locals who might not be able to defend themselves. We will hear their struggles, and Ubisoft notes that they might not be directly talking about the revolution, but that their existence and livelihood is totally impacted by the things that are going on the island. So I think a lot of side missions will be where people want to fight back against Anton because of personal reasons, so we can use that as an excuse to blow stuff up. Although it might sometimes be smarter to take a more stealthy approach, and that's because of the notoriety system which Ben Hall, the world designer, reveals in an interview with Games Radar. The world in Far Cry 5 can namely push back. The more carnage that you create, the faster enemy NPCs will recognize you and become actively hostile. So how this feature should work is that at some point Anton will send reinforcements to look for you because you're creating chaos. So it seems similar to, for example, a mercenary system that we saw in Assassin's Creed Odyssey in a way. Are you killing civilians, or we're just causing some chaos elsewhere, then these mercenaries would show up. So I'm curious if it will be that there's like a wanted element, where the more chaos you create, the higher the rank of the enemies will be that will send towards you. Or will it just be like one level, one threshold you will reach, and then Anton will just send extra men? Will be interesting. And also this should really reward stealth play, because if you can remain hidden, do not cause a ton of trouble, but still get the job done, you will also be encountering less enemies. And the good news is that this notoriety goes up, yes, but it can also go down. There's absolutely a way for you to get back into full incognito mode, which was really important, says Ben. So really curious about the fine details of this system. When I get another interview opportunity in the future, I will totally ask them about it. I also thought this was interesting regarding the story, because there will be cutscenes where Danny is not physically in the room. So we will just go to a scene where we see Anton and Diego talk to get a better idea of Anton's perspective on the revolution, which should help flesh out the villain way more. And we still don't know a lot about Anton's 13-year-old son, Diego, who will likely play a big role in the overall narrative, I'm sure. The idea is that we just don't know what Diego will do, because he will be growing up with his father, who's like teaching him things that do not maybe seem right to him at first. Maybe that changes, maybe he does follow in his father's footsteps. Or maybe he will end up helping Danny to overthrow his dad. I really hope that this part of the story, one way or the other, or maybe there's like another way, really surprises us, because that would be cool. Now on to some cool returning traversal tools, because yes, both the wingsuit and the grappling hook will be back in Far Cry 6. So we will likely be able to use the ladder to climb to higher places again, and then the wingsuit to not take fall damage when going down, of course, and it's just fun to use. But it seems that the way to get these items will be different this time around. In Far Cry 5 there was no real sense of accomplishment, because you were just unlocking these items from the perk menu. Now Ben notes in the Reddit AMA that it won't be handed to you on a plate regarding the wingsuit. So maybe this is like a side mission reward instead. Also cool is that it seems that the Fuego backpack can help us traverse the world a bit too. We only saw this AoE fire blast in the footage, but Ben notes that we can pull off some crazy stunts with it as well. It's not a double jump, more a burst that lets you traverse the world differently, and at the same time you leave a blazing trail of destruction behind you. Okay. We won't be able to like spam this. There seems to be a cooldown on using these backpacks. And we, by the way, saw some pretty crazy customization for the Supremos as well in this short Twitter clip. So it seems like there will be skins for this gear in the game too. And speaking of gear, the tier system from Far Cry New Dawn for weapons is not coming back in Far Cry 6, which is good news, because that was really causing the long time to kill on like elite enemies, or just enemies that were like higher rank than your current weapon. I think there are personally more exciting ways to make harder enemies, and it seems like Far Cry 6 is going that route. There will be DualSense support for if you play on PlayStation 5, and the game is 4K and 60 FPS on the next gen consoles. The game will also be fully playable in co-op, and will have a tether system like in Far Cry 5 and New Dawn, so meaning that you cannot get too far away from each other, otherwise you will take damage. You see that, for example, in this video from Mo, likely because of the technical limitations. I'm curious if it's different on like the more powerful consoles, but yeah, it seems to be in Far Cry 6. Maybe the real, true, only next-gen Far Cry in the future will finally change this. And by the way, also note that we will see more of the co-op soon, and they usually release a dedicated co-op trailer like we saw for Far Cry 5 with the Friends for Hire trailer. So it could be Gamescom end of August, or maybe already during the upcoming Ubisoft Forward event on June 12th. And we might actually hear about the DLC plans there too, because when asked about a content roadmap, Alex, the game director, noted that we're not going to keep you waiting for too long. Usually it's a few weeks before release that Ubisoft drops like a post-launch trailer, but seems like we might get more info earlier than that already. And as someone who played Far Cry 5 for months after release, I'm really curious how they will improve the live events and the stuff we had in that game. But I think Far Cry 6 will already be better positioned than Far Cry 5 for better post-launch support, so fingers crossed. I will be live reacting to the Ubisoft Forward event here on YouTube and bring you way more Far Cry 6 news from the event and of course beyond, or I might already have another video before that June 12th event. Just subscribe to stay up to date on everything Far Cry 6. A like on the video would of course really help me out, and totally check out my previous in-depth Far Cry 6 video on how they learned from their previous mistakes. You can watch it by clicking on the screen. I got a ton of Far Cry content on the channel. For now, I will speak to you next time, and